Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and the many welcome guests. I have a question for you. How many of you consider yourself to be collectors? And when I say that, I'm not saying accumulators, like you accumulate dust bunnies under your couch or orphan socks in your laundry, but how many of you, by a show of hands, would say you purposefully collect something? Collect something. All right, yeah, that's pretty good. Kurt, can I ask you, what do you collect?
Oh God, I'm going to sound like a violent person. I've got like 5 handguns. I mean, I'm very safe.
There's a good speaking point. Don't ask questions you don't know the answers to. Mary Ann, what do you collect?
Waterford crystal.
Waterford crystal, okay, all right, good. Well, I think it would be interesting to find out the story behind why people collect what they collect. And I think that we won't ask Kurt right away, but as you might guess, I also am a collector. And what I collect are primarily film versions of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I currently have 12 film versions, which really is just a drop in the bucket. There are hundreds of them. I'm pretty picky about the genre that I choose. I don't like animation, but regardless, I like the film versions of A Christmas Carol. Now, you may be familiar with the story. It is about the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, who is a selfish, stingy old man who on a Christmas Eve is visited by his deceased partner, as well as the spirits of Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas yet to come. And at the end of the story, which is the reason I love it, at the end of the story, he wakes up and he's a changed man. He's not selfish anymore. He cares about people. He's generous. He's loving. And the author, Charles Dickens, says, people were amazed to see the transformation in him. He became as good a man, as good a master, as good a friend. And it is just, I'm just thrilled with stories of genuine change. And in fact, it doesn't matter what the application is within the story. I don't care who the main character is. It could be Seymour Hicks in the 1935 version, or any of the other versions starring people like Henry Winkler, Kelsey Grammer, Tori Spelling is in one, Vanessa Williams, and one of my favorites is one that came out a couple of years, just last year, was Matthew McConaughey in Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. It's a good version of Christmas Carol. But regardless, I love to see people change. And I get all excited that morning they wake up and they're a different person. And I'm not the only one who likes stories about change. Consider the show Biggest Loser. 11 seasons it's been in. And don't you love seeing the transformation in people? Don't you like to see the before and after pictures? You get to get excited with them as they change their life, as they see the possibilities now that they've lost all this weight. I mean, change is an exciting part of life. And I'm always challenged by that question, how is it that people change? And then how is it that they keep the change, that they don't fall back to be the same person they were before? We've all experienced it in our own lives. And so let's take a quick look at our friend Ebenezer Scrooge just to see his transformation, maybe glean something from it that we can use. If you recall the story, he's first visited by his old partner Jacob Marley. Now Marley is there to warn him about the future that Ebenezer could face if he doesn't change his ways. Jacob is weighed down by chains, which are his penance for never having done a kind or generous thing for another. And throughout their conversation, you can see that Scrooge is maybe a little disturbed, but certainly not convinced. But later he's visited by the spirits. The first one is the spirit of Christmas past. And as Scrooge reviews his life, he sees some of the mistakes he's made, the selfish decisions he's made. He faces the loss of his sister. He faces his fiancée refusing his offer of marriage. And he begins to regret his past. And that's followed up by the ghost of Christmas present. And here's where Scrooge starts to soften up a little bit, because now he sees the effect that he has on people that he knows. He sees his clerk, Bob Cratchit. He sees Tiny Tim. He sees Tiny Tim struggle and asks the spirit of Christmas present, will this child survive? And he's told no. And now he's starting to soften up a little bit. He sees his nephew Fred, who's the only son of his sister, his beloved sister, and realizes that he's now shut off a part of his family that he really should be loving. So you see that for all this time in this conversation with the Spirit of Christmas Present, that he's starting to warm up to people. But then that's followed by the Spirit of Christmas Yet to Come. And here's where I think the change really begins. Because he sees the dark side of his future. He sees himself growing old, alone. He sees himself dying alone, dying unloved, having a life that hasn't counted for anything. And towards the end of the book, the end of the story, he's grabbing on to the cloak of the Spirit of Christmas Yet to Come, and he says, I know that men's actions foreshadow certain ends. But if those actions be departed from, certainly the ends will also change. Tell me this is true. And it's a turning point in the whole book, the whole story. And as he's pleading with the Spirit of Christmas Yet to Come, he wakes up, realizes it's Christmas morning, and his life has changed forever. And according to the book, he never went back. No recidivism in his life. Now, I know that it's a fictional story, and perhaps trying to compare that with our lives is a little bit of hyperbole. But don't you think that there are some parallels? To a certain extent, we can't change our past. We may have regrets. We certainly have some conflicts and priority struggles in the future, in the present. But really it's the future, it's how we view our future that determines how we're going to live our lives. We look at our future and we say, is that future something we really want? That's our motivation. That's our motivation. And I want to close with a quote. This is a quote from King Whitney Jr., an author. He said that change is a great strain on the human mind because the fearful are disturbed by it because things could get worse. The optimistic are encouraged by it because things could get better. But the confident ones, the confident, are inspired by change because the challenge exists to make things great. So let that be your encouragement and keep the change.